So you want to grow cucumbers in your monsoon or summer garden in southern Arizona. If this is the case, the first thing we need to talk about is the birds and the bees when it comes to cucumbers. This applies to all members of the cucurbit family, of which cucumbers are a part of. Plants like summer squash, zucchini, watermelon, cantaloupe, loofah, and many others are part of the cucurbit family. And lucky for us that live in the desert, all of them are heat-loving plants. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about some cucumber romance. Before we start talking about specific varieties, we need to go over 3 different vocabulary words. And the reason why this is important is because understanding how cucumbers and all members of the cucurbit family are pollinated will help you choose the best variety for your space. These 3 characteristics are just as important as plant size and number of days to maturity. Cucumbers, like all cucurbit plants, produce male and female flowers on the same plant. And this characteristic is called monoecious or monoecious. To get good fruit development, you have to get the pollen transferred from the male flower to the female flower. And as you probably know, this is called pollination and is done by insects and bees, and sometimes by the gardener. As a comparison, some plants like tomatoes and beans and peas have perfect flowers, and that means that they have both the male and the female flower inside the same flower structure, and that's why those kinds of plants can self-pollinate. I think cucumbers have the Goldilocks syndrome. If it's too hot or it's too cold, they just don't perform well. Too much heat or too much cold can cause more male flowers to be produced without so many female flowers, and in that case, you're just not going to get very much fruit production. So cucumbers like to have it just right. Cucumbers produce the best when temperatures are between 75 and 85 degrees. And obviously, if you live in southern Arizona, that is not what our summertime temperatures are. Lucky for us desert gardeners, there are some varieties of cucumbers that perform even better. There are new cucumber varieties being developed all the time that make them better for certain growing conditions, like growing in the desert in southern Arizona. Which leads me to my next vocabulary word, which is Parthenocarpic. Some plants can develop without pollination, and these plants are said to be Parthenocarpic. Parthenocarpic fruits are generally seedless, and that means there's less waste because there's more fruit material, less seed. This also means a longer shelf life because seeds produce ethylene, which speeds the ripening process and also the spoilage process. So if your fruits have less seed in them, you're going to be able to keep them for a little bit longer than you could if they did have seeds. But most important for this discussion is that you're going to get better and more reliable yields under certain growing conditions. A word of caution about the Parthenocarpic cucumbers is that if you grow them near the normal cucumber plants, they can become pollinated, and that means you will get seeds and less of the benefits that I just discussed. Gynoecious varieties of cucumbers are those that produce only female flowers. Unlike Parthenocarpic plants, these gynoecious flowers still require pollination from other male cucumber flowers. In order to achieve this, seed companies will include monoecious seeds along with your gynoecious seeds to make sure that you have some male flowers to pollinate those female flowers. Much like determinate varieties of tomatoes, gynoecious cucumbers will produce most of their ripe fruit all at the same time. Now that we've got that down, we can compare that with the information on seed packets for spacing and plant size and days to maturity, and we're going to have much more success with getting all of the cucumbers that we want this summer in our garden. One other important thing that you need to consider before choosing the variety is what are you going to use all of that fruit for? Are you going to pickle them or are you going to slice and eat them fresh? The use of the fruit that you want to grow is just as important as flower variety and plant size and days to germination. Okay, now let's talk about the specific varieties. I'm going to share with you 3 varieties that I'm growing right now that I've had great luck with, as well as 3 varieties that I'm trialing right now and why I chose to grow those. The first one is the Marketmore cucumber. It always gives me tons of fruit all summer long. The fruits are going to be a lovely 6 to 8 inch long dark green cucumber, and the vines will be about 4 to 6 inches long. I always eat the Marketmore cucumber fresh. I've heard that if you harvest it young, it's really good for pickles. And I want to be the kind of person that likes to eat and make fermented foods, but it's just not a taste that I've acquired yet. That's one of my goals this year, trying to make and eat more fermented food. So wish me luck with that. If you've had experience with pickling the Marketmore cucumber, I'd love it if you shared it below. The next one is the Armenian cucumber. This is technically a melon, however, it tastes and smells exactly like a cucumber. And it seems that when the heat of July really turns on, that's when your plant is going to explode in growth. I just got my very first Armenian cucumbers of the season at the beginning of July. I find that it does really well with a cattle panel trellis, and I've got it growing in one of my stock tanks that I use for a raised bed with a cattle panel trellis in that bed, and it is going crazy. It's actually growing up over the trellis and onto the roof of the shed that's behind. If you're looking for a plant that you can grow vertically that will produce a lot of fruit for you, I would recommend the Armenian cucumber. Just be aware that it does like to climb, so you need enough space for it to go up. The next and final cucumber that I'm growing right now in my garden that I've had experience with in the past is the potted snack cucumber. And this is a really special cucumber because it is so versatile. This is a cucumber that I grew indoors during the winter time as part of my indoor gardening experiment, and I couldn't believe how well it did. I grew it in an 8-inch pot. I would recommend maybe going up to a 10-inch pot because I found that at the very end of the experiment it got a little bit root bound, but it produced so many fruits inside. I liked picking these fruits at about 3 inches long. They had a really dark, smooth, thin green skin, and they were so good. Now, we were just talking about male and female flowers and the importance of pollination with cucumbers. So how is it that I was able to grow cucumbers inside my house without the presence of other insects or bees? It wasn't because I was pollinating it, much like you can do with other plants like squash. Well, let's refer back to our vocabulary words. This potted snack cucumber is parthenocarpic, meaning that it doesn't require pollination. So it is a perfect choice if you're wanting to grow something on your windowsill, inside, or on your countertop, or on a balcony, and maybe you don't have a lot of insects around because you're in the city, all kinds of reasons. It's such a flexible plant. But of course, being the experimenter I am, and the fact that I consider my garden a laboratory did not allow me to let it end there. I had to see if the potted snack cucumber would grow well outside as well as inside. So because of its small stature, I decided it might be the perfect choice for growing between my eggplants. And why would that be? Well, I like to experiment with using living mulch or living ground covers that serve multiple purposes. I wanted to see if that cucumber could shade the soil and keep it moist and increase photosynthesis while also providing me with more food. So that's exactly what I did. Earlier in the season, I planted some of the seeds. They all germinated really well, and now they're beginning to spread and branch out, and I've even gotten my first cucumber off of that. So underneath my eggplants that are producing tons of fruit, I'm now getting additional fruit in the form of cucumbers as well as shading my soil. If you have a small space garden and you're looking to utilize the high, medium, and low planes as well as shade your soil and increase photosynthesis, try using plants such as cucumbers that won't take over the space and that'll cooperate really well by growing underneath other plants that you're trying to grow. Okay, so the very last 3 are new to me this year. I've never tried these varieties. I'm really excited about them, and I want to share them with you too. If you've had experience with these varieties, please let me know below. The first one is the Poinsett 76, and it is said to produce 8-inch long, straight, dark cucumbers over the whole season. It's listed as resistant to many diseases, and it's heat tolerant and said to be a good slicer. Those tick all of the boxes for me, so I wanted to try that in my garden. And once again, I'm using it as a ground cover underneath other taller plants. I want to mention here that if you're using vining plants to cover the ground, make sure that they do get enough light. Cucumbers need about 6 to 8 hours of full sun every day. Now, since my eggplants are not super bushy and I have them spread far enough apart, the cucumbers are getting plenty of sun. The next one is the straight 8 cucumber. This is an heirloom cucumber that was developed in 1935. It produces 8-inch long, straight, dark green fruits. I think there is a bit of romance involved in choosing some of these heirloom varieties, because if you think about how many years and how many generations these cucumber plants have been grown in people's gardens, allowed to set fruit, the seeds saved from them, and then carefully planted the next year, I think that level of care is just beautiful, and I can't wait to try the straight 8 so that I can feel like I am part of that contribution to gardening. Since it's an heirloom variety, you can save your seeds at the end of the season too, for yourself or to share with other people. The last one that I want to talk about is the Spacemaster. And the Spacemaster is said to grow really well in smaller spaces, which I think is important to know if you're in the city and you have a small garden, maybe in raised beds, or maybe even on a balcony. I'm sure that you could grow it vertically, although I'm using it once again to sprawl and cover the ground. The vines are only 2 to 3 feet long, but they produce 7 to 8 inch long fruits, which I think is a really great value for a small space. I don't have any more room this season, unfortunately. I think that the bigger my garden gets, the bigger I want my garden to be, because I just keep planting more and more things. Like I said before, my garden is like my laboratory, and I love being able to experiment and learn not only with new varieties, but also with new techniques. But I do want to mention a couple that I plan to try next year. Maybe you've had experience with them, or maybe you'd like to do research on them yourself, but one of them is called the lemon cucumber, which produces a really lovely, small, round, pale yellow fruit. The other one is a hybrid variety. It's called the Katrina F1. Now, I've heard people growing these vertically and that they do get very tall, so keep that in mind, because you'll need to have a vertical trellis or some sort of support that allows the Katrina F1 to climb as much as it wants to. But I've heard that the Katrina F1 produces an amazing amount of fruit. Okay, that is it. That's all of the cucumbers that I'm experimenting with this season. Let me know below the cucumbers that you're growing in your garden. I'd love to hear about all the different varieties you're trying. Until next time, happy gardening.